Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in and I'm going to put the skeleton in the body. So I'm going to flick from modeling over to rigging, skeleton to create joints. I'm going to open up the options on create joints. Things I like and things I don't like. I don't like the variable bone radius. I like to set those myself. And then over here, primary axis, secondary axis. I usually go and take the secondary axis world orientation and make that negative Z. Okay, just a little habit of mine. And now, while I'm making joints, let's go in here and I think I've got on this one here, you can see there's an option X-ray joints is on. So as I put in my joints, you're going to be able to see through my geometry. That's also under shading and X-ray joints. And so I just put a joint right here, and I'm going to put another one really close by. Let's hit, for some reason I can't see these very well. I'm just going to go into display, animation, and I'm going to go to joint size, and I'll just make them a bit bigger so easier to see. Yes, c'est bon. Okay, great. There they are. And then I'm going to put in my one for my hips, right? Your hips aren't right on your crotch. They're up a bit higher. Okay, where the pivot points for your hips are. And then I'm going to put in my knee. And I make sure that my knee is bent. Put in my ankle. Put in the balls of my feet. And then I'm going to put in my toe. I'm going to hit enter. Okay. So there's my side view. I'm just going to go to my front view for this. And if I grab the joint here for the hip joint, I'm going to leave the other ones in place. Remember, basically, I'm leaving this extra wacky kind of joint here so that I can do what I consider to be the simplest back rig that gives you independent hip movement possible. Okay, that's what I think. I think it's just easy. I'm going to move my leg over a little bit. I'm trying to line it up so that my knee, my ankle, and my hip are all pretty much straight. This is just going to make your life easier because this is kind of like your first human rig. Okay, remember this is a really, really simple rig that I'm setting up. And let's just go and name these things really quick. And my hypergraph isn't showing up. Damn it all to hell. What about this work spaces? If I go in here and I just hit reset classic, my default. Okay, cool. And then if I go in and I hit, oh freaking hell, I hate that. Go to custom and I'll just hit my hypergraph again. And boom, there it is. Yay! Everything showed up again. That's a quick fix. I'm going to go in here and name these things. I think I might just put this on pause while I do this because this is, well, maybe I won't. Okay, because I just think this is boring, but I'm going to go in hip. There is my knee. Knee! And ankle. I'll move this over a bit and you can kind of see it from the side which one I'm on. Ankle. And there is my ball of my foot. And there is my toe joint. And I usually go in toe underscore end. Okay, because that's the end joint. And here, I call this one here that's just hanging below my root joint, because this one here is my root. Root? I am root? And then I'll go over here, and this one here is going to be my pelvis. Okay, so I have a pelvis. Pelvis, and I have a hip joint. So the pelvis, I'm considering the hips kind of together, and yeah, there you go. And then once I get here, if I select the hip and I go modify and I use the prefix hierarchy names and I do a capital L underscore, bloop, then I get L hip, L knee, L ankle, and all those things down there. So now that I've got that working, I'm just going to grab this top joint. I'm going to grab my joints again. And I'm going to click on this joint, the root joint, with my, I'm in modeling, go to rigging, skeleton, create joints. I have the create joints tool again. La la la. Come on. Okay, so we're back here. And I got to think about where my belly is going to bend. Okay, so I've got a root joint just slightly above the belly. I'm going to have this kind of bend area. And then right where I think the kind of lower end of the ribs are, that's going to be another area where my torso bends. Okay, and then as I get up here, this is going to be the bottom of my neck. It's going to be the middle of my neck. That's a bone of controversy. Okay, I usually put 3 joints in my neck. I just think it looks better, especially with a character with kind of a long neck. And then I got a joint here for the top of the head, and I'm just going to hit enter, and that finishes them off. So let's name those. So these first bottom 2, I'm just going to go up here, and I'm going to change... I don't want you to know that I'm subscribed. I'm going to go to rename, and actually you can't see this in the recording. Actually, if I can just move this down a little bit. Down. So all I did was I switched from absolute transform to rename. Okay, and then I can grab these 2 joints at the same time, and I can type in back, and it'll do back 1 and 2. Grab these 3 right here, and I'll go in neck 1, 2, 3. And actually, the neck 3 is actually like your head joint, right? So maybe I'll just call that head. Then there's this one here, that's the head underscore end. And so I've got all those joints in. Okay, great. Then I'm just going to go in and do my arm. La 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 la. I'll get rid of that. And the arm, I always see this crap that I complain about all the hell that I see people doing when they're rigging. They always put this clavicle bone along the clavicle, and they kind of put it up in the frickin' trapezius and stuff like that. But if you really think about where the scapula is, that's where the frickin' pivot point is. And that's below the clavicle and above the pec. Okay? So to put it into words, yeah, it's really the scapula that's actually kind of causing the pivot for the shoulder, I do believe. Okay, it's kind of a combination of this seems like the clavicle kind of holds it in place, and the scapula is where the pivot point is coming from when you shrug. So I kind of follow that. And so I'm going to place it a bit lower than where the clavicle bone would be. Then I'm going to go over here, and we're going to go into the middle of the kind of the shoulder area, not up in the freaking top of the shoulder, because otherwise your character won't deform very well. And I'm going to stop for a moment, and you'll see they're kind of sitting something like this. Okay, this clavicle, I still like it kind of near the front. And I should point out, too, that when I put in the joints for my spine, I did put them kind of in the middle, not towards the back. I always find towards the back gives bad deformations in the front. And if you need to move them after you've placed them, if you just hold down D, you can move them after you've placed them. Okay? But I've got these joints here, and I'm just going to flip to the top view for this. So the shoulder is definitely not in place. I'm just going to go like this and get it into place. And I have to tweak this model. This model I'm not happy with at all. But that's okay. And I'll just get the create joint tool again. And I'm going to go here to the elbow. Okay, right where it's bent. You want a little bend in your elbow, your life is better. And I'll go to the wrist. The wrist is a little bit better, just in a little bit. Okay. And let's go to the front view again. So I've got my arm in place. And let's just do something like this. And I'll grab the rotator tool. And I'm trying to rotate it so that the wrist is in place using the shoulder. And that way keeps my shoulder, elbow, and wrist quite well lined up. And so if I'm using IK handles, my life is going to be better. And I might consider actually going in and lining up my geometry with the way the joints are. Okay, so afterwards, if you want to, if you just went in and grabbed an edge and I double click, grab the move tool, and I use my soft selection, and and I hold down B and I middle click, I can just quickly adjust this however I want. Life is better that way. I'm just going to undo that. Okay. And then I'm going to get over here to the fingers. And let's just do something kind of funny. I'm going to go to the front view in this one too. And actually I'm just going to quickly flip in here for one moment. I've got this kind of new trick. I'm always trying new tricks out and seeing how I feel. So if I grab these faces, I can turn off soft selection. And then I just go and I grow the selection. I hit G a few times till I get to the end. Okay, cool. And then I go and I do an isolate select. And then I put this to the front view. So now I can see my finger quite plainly because there's a bunch of them all kind of shuffled up right here. And then I'm going to grab my create joint tool. And I can place one here, and here, and here, and here, but boom! And I hit enter. Okay, so now I've got that roughly in place. I'm just going to go back here to the perspective and see. I missed, but they lined up really, really well. Let's go to the top view. Okay, so that's lined up. And now I'm just going to turn off that isolate selective. It's just to kind of get those joints in. Just another way to do things if you want to, if things are too busy in your scene. My joints are displaying too large now, so I'm just going to go back here to joint size. And I can change this universally. Great. And now that I've got that roughly in place, if I go in here and make a duplicate, and I'll place this over here, and then I can go in here and rotate it, or rotate the base, and line up that finger. If it doesn't line up correctly, remember you can just grab the joint, and if you use the Translate Z, you can middle click and kind of place it. And I suspect it's there. Middle click, place it there. I should double check and make sure they're all lined up. Okay, so I guessed right on that one. Okay, and if you don't like that, you can I can go in here and make a duplicate, and I might go and put on the there's a little button up here for snap to projected centers. That's in the recording. Yeah, it is. And when I move this, it'll snap to kind of the middle. And I always suggest rotating it into place. And then I can just grab that and I'll use the move tool, and it will always snap to the center. Okay, and my rotations might be off a little bit in the fingers, but I don't think it'll really bother you that much. Okay, remember this is your first rig, so it's like, I could make everything perfect, but yeah, so I'll do something like this, rotate it, and just grab the move tool, and it's got snap to projected centers on, and I kind of got a rough idea where these centers are. Maybe I'll even hit 4. So I can kind of see that's the pivot point I was looking for. Okay, great. And then for the thumb, if I just take this and I duplicate it, let's pull this back. Let's go into the top view again. There is a pivot point for your thumb that's kind of close to your wrist. Okay, I'll rotate it out. And I'm just going to rotate it to its angle here a little bit, because that's kind of the angle your thumb rotates on. And I'm also just gonna, let's get to an angle like this, and I'll kind of try to rotate it in place. I'm just kind of looking at the axes here. Okay, boop, and that's just snapping it into the center. Let's see, how does that thumb look? That thumb sucks. This is what happens when I'm going way too fast just to get things done for a tutorial. Done. Let's actually go to the top view one more time. And there's another bone that I don't think I've seen anyone else put in but me. I just kind of put this thing in here. You don't necessarily have to put it. You can put the fingers so they're parented to the hand, but I kind of like to put a palm bone in. And in the palm bone, let's call it palm. This is just for bending, so you get that kind of crease in the inside of your hand, and that you can pick up bottles better. I'm just going to grab all these joints, and I'm going to parent it to the palm bone. Palm bone gets parented to the wrist bone. The thumb bone gets parented to, or I should call them joints, gets parented to the wrist joint as well. Maybe one more here. I want to get a joint between the elbow and the wrist. Okay, if I have an open, an exposed forearm, you're going to notice there's going to be a twist thing that's not there, and we need it. So I want a joint somewhere in the middle that's lined up with these two. What I can do is under skeleton, there's something called insert joint, and I can insert the joint, whoop, like this. I just click on the elbow and I drag. If I have multiple children, it doesn't work. Okay, I've kind of noticed that this doesn't really work with the joint in the middle. I know there's workarounds and stuff like that, but I'm never happy with them. They become too complicated. If I take the wrist and I parent it back there like that, I just parented it, so you can see I've got this bone is lined up, so it's looking right at this joint, and it works better to see the scale tool. The scale tool lines up with the local orientation axis, and so you can see it's aimed directly at the wrist here, so that works better. And that way I'll have independent kind of ulna movement on this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to call that the ulna. I call it ulna because radius always seems like a name for something else. Ulna is fairly distinct, and you go, oh, that's your ulna bone. Okay. And I'm just going to try to quickly name these things. So I'm going to call this one shoulder. And I'll call that one elbow. I always name things based off the pivot point. Okay, and here let's just go into perspective as I'm trying to name these things. Did I miss the clavicle? Clavicle! Clavicle! Great. And this 15-minute video, it's going to take 20 minutes to finish this off. God damn it. Okay, wrist. Okay, and then when I get to these other joints here, let's just go into the hypergraph for a second. La 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 la. And so these joints right here, all three of those are the index joints. So I'm going to go up to that quick rename and index. Okay. And these ones here, that's my pinky. Great. And then what do we got here? That's going to be my ring finger. Even though one finger doesn't really get the ring, I don't know what else to call it. If anyone has a good name, give me a suggestion. Because I have no freaking clue what else to call that little group of phalanges there. Okay, mid finger, and then the thumb. Great, thumb 1, 2, 3, 4. So there they all are. Everything's named in this little chain. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to use that modify prefix hierarchy names again, and I'll use capital L underscore. Okay, and that renames all of them with a capital L. And then I'm going to take this clavicle joint and I'm going to parent it to back 2. So I'm just going to go and press P, and now it's parented in. You can see my whole skeleton starting to line up here. Great. And then, so I got everything parented together. Now I want to flip it across the other side. So if I go to skeleton and I go to mirror joints, I open up the options. And I'm mirroring across, in my case, the YZ. You typically want to be mirroring across the YZ. Your life is better if that's what you're doing. If your model isn't oriented for this, you're going to be in for other problems. Search for capital L, replace with capital R. I hit apply. Bloop. There's the arm. You can only do you have to do them each one at a time. Then I go and I do the leg. So I'm grabbing the hip joint and I hit apply. Boop. There. Done. And maybe one more thing I will do to this whole skeleton unit here is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to group it. So edit group, and I'll call the group skeleton underscore group. Okay, and I'll put that onto a layer, and I might even call the layer skeleton underscore layer. Okay, so I can quickly identify that as the layer that the skeleton is on. Okay, cool. And I think I should stop this video here.